It is said, the optimist looks at the bagel and the pessimist sees the hole. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me tell you a story. You may have heard of the town of Chelm. Chelm is a real town in Poland, but in Jewish stories it is inhabited by confused people who think that they are wise. For example, they believe that the moon is more important than the sun. And why? Because the moon shines at night when we need light, but the sun shines during the day when there is plenty of light already. Such is the thinking of the Chelmites. Well, one day, Shmuel decided he wanted to see what paradise was like. And so he packed some food and started walking to find paradise. He walked all day, stopping a few times to eat, and when night came, he lay down by the side of the road to go to sleep. He was worried, though, would he remember which way to go in the morning? And since he hadn't yet found paradise, clearly it was further down the road. To make sure he went the right way, he took off his shoes and pointed them away from Chelm, and then he went to sleep. That night, a wild dog came by and he saw Shmuel's shoes. He sniffed them. He pushed them around a little bit to see if they were interesting. They were not. And then it wandered off. In the morning, Shmuel woke up and he found his shoes and started walking in the direction that they were pointing, never realizing that they were pointing back toward Chelm. After walking most of the day, he reached a village that clearly must be paradise. Now, it was true that paradise looked a lot like Chelm, but whatever. He was in paradise, he was sure of it, whereas his own village of Chelm was so noisy. Paradise seemed so full of life. Shmuel decided to explore a bit, and when he did, he found a street that looked just like his own street, with a house that looked just like his house. But whereas his old house was so cluttered and small, this house in paradise was cozy and homey. And the food, it was so much better than what he had had in Chelm. And in paradise, he slept better than he ever had before. The next day when Shmuel woke up, he found that he was a little bit bored. So he decided to see if there was a job similar to the one he had had in Chelm. What do you know? There was. And yet this job gave so much meaning to his life, like he was doing something meaningful for the world. He had never felt that satisfaction before while working in Chelm. Eventually, you know the end of the story, right? One of the young women in Chelm caught his eye. She reminded him of someone he had known back in his city, but this woman was clearly even smarter, and she had such a great personality that Shmuel just fell in love with her. They married and had a family, and to the day he died, Shmuel had a wonderful life, thinking that he was indeed living in paradise. Now, we all know, whether from the movies or our own experience, that there is no place like home. All it takes is tapping the heels of those ruby red slippers 3 times, and we'd be transported back to the place where bonds of family offer support and familiar surroundings offer comfort. As we learned during the pandemic, home can be a refuge from the chaos of a world in upheaval. But sometimes Even one's home can't provide the protection and security that we long for and associate with it. Our ancestors recognized that too. Our portion shoftim, which deals primarily with justice, legislating it, meting it out, ultimately pursuing it in whatever form necessary in order to keep peace. In shoftim, our ancestors responded to a need of the community and created cities of refuge, not paradise, but an innovative legal response to protect someone who needed shelter from vigilante justice. You see, in those days, family members who had been bereaved would have the right to avenge the death of a loved one who had died at someone else's hands. In the event that someone had inadvertently committed manslaughter, a terrible and unfortunate accident. For example, let's say an axe head flew off its handle and caused a fatal injury. A city of refuge offered the offender a safe place where they would be protected from the bereaved family's vengeance. Within its walls, they were safe from reprisals because they too were under the protection of the law. And at the same time, it broke the chain of violence so it would not be perpetuated from generation to generation. And while we live in very different times and circumstances, if we look within, we can acknowledge that there are things that we carry from which we may seek refuge too. Maybe it is perfectionism, or an inner critic, or a misdeed for which we cannot forgive ourselves. I'm sure you can add to the list, and I won't ask you to do it aloud. For some, that modern city of refuge might be found, dare I even say it, in an immersive spa experience like Gurney's or Canyon Ranch or Kripalu, whose very environment is designed to shelter or create a temporary refuge from our stresses, to provide the participants with a different perspective. Their very purpose is relief from whatever we harbor within. Only a week ago, the New York Times had an article which told us that a similar relief is right at hand. We don't have to go away. On any given weekend, we can experience relief through a staycation. So a weekend can feel like a taste of paradise, but its success depends on how you frame it. Jamie Kurtz, psychology professor at James Madison University, assures us that a few days at home could bring more happiness, more relief than some far-flung adventure. But it requires a change in our mindset. So to test this theory, this is a scientific study. A marketing professor at the Anderson School of Management, Cassie Holmes, created a study in which one group of participants were asked to enjoy their weekend like any other they would enjoy. And the second group was asked to treat their time like a vacation. And they reported feeling happier and more rested when they returned to work the following Monday. They hadn't yet factored in Shabbat. So two factors here made a difference. One was to identify things that are enjoyed during a typical vacation, and to try to incorporate them into your weekend experience. If it was sightseeing, they advised, make an effort to explore a new part of town, be a tourist in your own city. And if it was cuisine, to try a new recipe at home or a new dining experience. And if it was simply the benefit that travel affords many of us, which is to be less available to the demands of work, and so keep it at arm's length, then they advise participants to put down their technology and respond only on a limited basis. The other factor was one that we've already spoken about, a matter of perspective, to anticipate and plan activities which are pleasurable, and thereafter to review them and talk about them and renew their delight by detailing their pleasures with all who agree to listen. Like Shmuel, who was on his way to paradise and ended his journey in the same place he began, but came to see his life through an entirely different lens. His intention created a change in his expectations, and so he found renewal and satisfaction. What had previously been a burden became a pleasure, because his perspective was transformed by his own vision of paradise. This new month of Elul calls us to start our own internal transformation so that we may change our perspective of who we are and what we hope to become as we anticipate the new year. In a Hasidic tale, a rabbi once asked a member of his congregation, "If you are going east and suddenly you want to travel west, how far do you have to go?" And the man gave him many thoughtful and complex answers. And the rabbi finally cut him off and responded, "If you are going east and you want to go west, all you have to do is turn around. It's as simple as that." Let us heed the wisdom of these teachers and turn our shoes toward our destination of renewal and repair. And once we take that first step, may we find at the path's end that we have come closer to the person we hope to be. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so.